Ecosystems are made up of all living organisms that interact with each other and the physical factors present in that region. They vary in size, and major ecosystems are known as biomes, which include rainforests and deserts. Ecosystems are dynamic, which means they are constantly changing due to the biotic and abiotic factors.
Examples of ecosystems are large trees, rock pools, and playing fields. Large trees, like oak trees, are affected by biotic factors such as the trunk layer, providing food and shelter to insects, caterpillars, and larvae, and the branches, leaves, and canopy where squirrels gather acorns, small birds hunt larvae, and sparrowhawks hunt small birds.
The shape of tides every day affect the physical characteristics of rock pools and bring in new organisms into the pool from the ocean, such as seaweed, sea anemones, whelk, shrimps, and fish. Playing fields are extensive open areas of grass with differences due to variation in climatic conditions. They are much more exposed to extreme conditions as they are not sheltered by fences or buildings. Examples of organisms in playing fields are worms and grass. Edaphic,
Light
temperature,
and water availability.
Trophic levels are stages in the food chains and food webs. The first level is composed of the producers, which are organisms that convert light energy to chemical energy by photosynthesis. Subsequent levels are consumers, which are organisms that obtain energy by feeding on other organisms. There is rarely more than 4 trophic levels, as there is not enough sufficient biomass and stored energy left to support any further organisms.
Decomposers are important in food webs as they break down dead organisms to release nutrients back into the ecosystem.
Food chains show the transfer of biomass and therefore energy through organisms in an ecosystem.
In nature, they are not as simple as this one. Different chains overlap and interlink to form complicated food webs.
Ecological efficiency is the efficiency with which the biomass or energy is transferred from one trophic level to the next. Biomass in each trophic level is nearly always less than the trophic level below. Only a small proportion of food organisms ingest is converted into new tissue, which is part of the biomass available for the next trophic level.
At the producer level, some of the energy is used by the organism in metabolic processes, such as photosynthesis, so it cannot be passed on. Most sunlight, however, is actually reflected. At the consumer level, not all biomass is eaten. Some is used for movement and respiration. Some is lost from animal excretory materials.
Agriculture involves manipulating the environment for crops and to rear animals for food and produce. It creates very simple food chains as the number of trophic levels are reduced.
For cultivating plants, there are just 2 trophic levels.
For rearing animals, there are 3 trophic levels.
Minimum energy is lost as there are few levels, which ensure as much energy as possible is transferred into biomass that can be eaten by humans. Most natural populations show the same characteristics if the growth of the new population over time is plotted on a graph. Phase 1 is a period of slow growth. Birth rate is higher than death rate.
Phase 2 is a period of rapid growth. The total population multiplies exponentially and no constraints act to limit this. The conditions are ideal and the maximum growth rate is achieved.
Phase 3 is a stable state, when further population growth is prevented by external constraints. Birth and death rates are approximately equal. Limiting factors prevent further growth and may cause a decline. Biotic factors include competition, disease, predation. Abiotic factors include O2, H2O, temperature change, light change, and pH.
The carrying capacity is the maximum population size that environment can support.
Migration also affects population size. There are 2 types of migration. Immigration is the movement of individual organisms into a particular area, which increases population size. Emigration is a movement of individual organisms away from a particular area, which decreases population size.
Density-dependent factors are where population growth rates are regulated by the density of a population. Most are biotic.
Density-independent factors have an effect on the whole population, regardless of its size. They can dramatically change population size, and in some cases can remove whole populations of a species from a region. Competition is an example of a biotic limiting factor. There are two main types of competition: interspecific and intraspecific competition.
Interspecific competition occurs when two or more different species compete for the same resource, which results in a reduction of the resource available to both populations. The competitive exclusion principle is where two species are competing for limited resources, and the one that is better adapted and uses the resources more effectively will outcompete/eliminate the
For
other.
example, when the grey squirrel was introduced to the UK from America in the 1870s, they increased in population quickly as they could eat a wider range of food. This resulted in a reduction of red squirrels.
Intraspecific competition occurs when members of the same species compete for the same resource. Availability of resource determines population size. This results in fluctuations in the number of organisms present in a particular population over time. In Stage 1, there is an increase in population size due to plentiful resources. Stage 2, there are more individuals who share the resources, so they are now limited, resulting in a decrease in population size. In Stage 3, less competition exists as there is a smaller population, which means more organisms survive and reproduce, resulting in population growth. This cycle of events will repeat.
Predation is when an organism kills and eats another organism. It is a type of interspecific competition between predator and prey species. As the population of one organism changes, it causes a change in the size of the other, resulting in fluctuations of population size. Stage 1. Increase in prey provides more food for predators, resulting in an increase in predator population. Stage 2. Increased predators eat more prey, causing a decline in prey population. Stage 3. Reduced prey population can no longer support the large predator population. Intraspecific competition for food increases, resulting in a decrease in predator population. Stage 4. Reduced predators will result in less of the prey population being killed, which will increase the prey population.
However, predator-prey relationships are not as simple as this in the wild because other factors will influence the population size, such as the presence of other predators and the availability of food plants for the prey. Fluctuations in numbers may also result from the seasonal changes in abiotic factors.
Conservation is the maintenance of biodiversity through human action or management, whereas preservation is the protection of an area by restricting or banning human interference so that the ecosystem is kept in its original state. Objects and buildings are more commonly preserved and the natural environment is conserved.
Conservation is dynamic and needs to adapt to constant change. It involves the management of ecosystems so that natural resources can be used without running out. This is known as sustainable development. Also includes maintaining diversity between species and genetic diversity within species. Approaches for conservation also include reclamation, which is the process of restoring ecosystems that have been damaged or destroyed, and techniques like controlled burning of areas of a forest, which can halt succession and increase biodiversity.
Conservation is important for many reasons. Economic, to provide resources humans need to survive and to provide an income. Social, enjoying the beauty of wild ecosystems and using for beneficial activities for relaxation and exercises, such as for tourism. And ethical, all organisms have a right to exist and all play an important part within their ecosystem, which means humans should not have the right to decide which organism can survive. We also have a moral responsibility for future generations to conserve a wide variety of natural ecosystems.
Preservation is most commonly used when preserving sensitive resources, which can be easily damaged or destroyed by disturbances. When land is preserved, visitation is not allowed, except when managing and monitoring. For example, newly discovered caves or virgin caves may contain sensitive geological formations or unique and undisturbed ecosystems, so free movement between caves may cause damage. This can be avoided by barring entrance altogether.
Only preservation can guarantee the integrity of the ecosystem, but some say it is pointless to have a resource that no one can enjoy. A sustainable resource is a renewable resource that is being economically exploited in such a way that it will not diminish or run out. Existing resources should also be used more efficiently through reusing and recycling.
The sustainable management of forests allows for the maintenance of a forest biodiversity, while maintaining demand for supply of wood and economic viability of timber production. Small scale includes copicing, where the tree trunk is cut close to the ground and new shoots form from the cut surface and mature. Eventually, the shoots are cut and in their place, more are produced. Rotational copicing takes place in most managed woodlands, where the process occurs in small sections around the forests. Pollarding is similar to copicing, but the trunk is cut higher up, so deer and other animals cannot eat the shoots as
Large-scale production is based around the technique of felling large areas of forest. Felled trees are destroyed and will not regrow. To ensure that production is sustainable, timber companies practice selective cutting, replant trees, plant trees an optimal distance apart to reduce competition, manage pests and pathogens, and ensure areas of forest remain for indigenous people.
There are disadvantages of large-scale production. Habitats are destroyed, soil minerals are reduced, and bare soil can lead to soil erosion. Overfishing has led to populations of some species of fish to decrease. International agreements are made about the number of fish that can be caught, such as the Common Fisheries Policy in the EU. Fishing quotas provide limits on the number of certain species of fish allowed to be caught in a particular area.
The aim is to maintain the natural population of these species that allows the fish to reproduce sufficiently to maintain the population.
Other techniques include the use of nets with different mesh sizes, allowing commercial and recreational fishing only at certain times of the year, and the introduction of fish farming to maintain supply of protein food whilst preventing the loss of wild species.
The Masai Mara is a national reserve in Kenya, primarily a savanna ecosystem, and has regions of grasslands and woodlands as well as open plains, and home to a wide range of mammals. Traditionally, the Masai Mara has been used by local tribes for livestock grazing. Grazing is now limited to areas on the edge of the reserve, as local tribes are prevented from entering the park. Populations have grown as larger herds graze the grassland areas, and more trees are removed for fuel. As the vegetation is removed, the risk of soil erosion increases. As grassland has been converted into cropland, over time, this leads to a reliance on fertilizers for effective crop growth.
The Masai Mara relies on tourism for most of its economic input. Ecotourism is tourism directed towards natural environments to support conservation efforts. It is a type of sustainable development which aims to reduce the impact of tourism on the natural environment. This is usually seen as a less invasive use of land than agriculture. However, it can have negative impacts such as the repeated use of hiking trails or the use of mechanized transport that can contribute to soil erosion.
The Mara plays an important role in the conservation of endangered species, such as the black rhino, endangered because of illegal poaching. An active conservation program was established, which included the employment of reserve rangers, provision of communication equipment, vehicles, and other infrastructures. A number of scientific research projects have been or currently are being undertaken in the Masai Mara. A constant balance has to be maintained between the human and animal populations. For example, legal hunting is used to cull excess animals. Livestock also faces threats from migratory wildlife. As the human population expands, more homes are required as well as land for cattle and agriculture. The Terai region stretches along Nepal's southern border with India. It is defined by floodplains and the land is fertile and is the main agricultural region of the country. The Terai is an area of extreme biodiversity and there are also large areas of thick forest. They are an important source of national income, but large areas of forest has been cleared for agricultural or timber production. This has worsened the effects of monsoon flooding.
Sustainable forest management is being achieved through supportive national legislation and community forestry groups. These groups develop their own operational plans, set harvesting rules, set rates and prices for products. Cooperative networks have also allowed small forestry businesses to work effectively together.
The Terai requires a range of management strategies for sustainable land use, including promoting the production of fruits and vegetables in the hills and mountain regions, improving irrigation facilities, multiple cropping, the growth of nitrogen-fixing crops, growing crop varieties, improving fertilization techniques.
A peat bog is a region of wet spongy ground that contains decomposing vegetation. Undisturbed peatland is a carbon sink storing CO2, but once dried it can be used as a fuel and is also used to mix with soil to improve soil structure and increase acidity. Commercial peat extraction is a major threat to this ecosystem.
Peat forms when plant material is inhibited from fully decaying by acidic and anaerobic conditions. This normally occurs in wet or boggy areas, and therefore peat is mainly composed of wetland vegetation, including mosses, sedges, and shrubs. Peatland supports a wide variety of organisms.
Lowland raised bogs are rare and threatened habitats. Their maintenance will maintain biodiversity, contribute to flood management, erosion control, and carbon storage. The key to conserving lowland bogs is to maintain or restore appropriate water levels. Steps which are taken to conserve areas of lowlands bog include ensuring that the peat and vegetation of the bog surface is as undisturbed and as wet as possible. This is usually done by surrounding the bogs with ditches to allow water to run off. The removal of seedling trees from the area, and using controlled grazing to maintain the biodiversity of peatland. A number of organizations are working to preserve these important ecosystems. The Galapagos is an archipelago of volcanic islands that rise up from the bed of the Pacific Ocean west of Ecuador. They are of special interest because they have never been connected to the mainland. The majority of land animals living on the islands are reptiles. The Galapagos rice rat is a mammal, and it arrived on the island by being washed away from mainland riverbanks. Other species of animals on the islands include the Galapagos giant tortoise, the flightless cormorant, and the marine iguana.
On the larger islands, 3 distinct regions exist, each of which support particular plant species. These regions are the coastal zone, the arid zone, and the humid zone.
The islands were hardly visited by humans until the whalers disrupted the island's fragile ecosystem. In 1959, the Galapagos National Park was established. Measures have been taken to protect the ecosystem, including introduction of park rangers across the island, limiting human access to particular islands or specific parts of islands, controlling migration to and from the island, strict controls over movement of introduced animals such as pigs.
The extreme conditions in Antarctica means it is almost entirely covered by an ice sheet.
The animals present in Antarctica are animals such as penguins, whales and seals. They have a thick layer of blubber to insulate them from the cold. There are also plants present in Antarctica, however they can only grow in the ice-free regions. Lichens and moss grow in more favourable niche such as in sand, soil and rock. Algae also grow in many sheltered areas. In the past, the only people who have visited Antarctica are scientists. However, recently there has been an increase in number of tourists visiting the area.
Human activity has had a number of effects on the continent, such as global warming, hunting of whales and seals, soil contamination, and discharging of waste into the sea.
In 1961, the Antarctic Treaty was established. It was set out to protect the unique nature of the Antarctic continent. Some of its provisions include scientific cooperation between nations, protection of the Antarctic environment, conservation of plants and animals, designation and management of protected areas, management of tourism.
Snowdonia National Park in the northwest of Wales contains the highest mountain range in England and Wales, and it has very rugged terrain. There is a rich diversity of habitats in the region which provides homes for a wide range of birds. These include coast and estuary birds, forest birds, and moorland and mountain birds. Snowdonia supports an equally diverse range of plant species, such as the hardy Arctic alpine plants that have evolved to cope with extreme conditions. Lower down the slopes, the mountain is fringed by woodlands of oak, alder, and wick elm. Snowdonia National Park was created in 1951 to conserve the biodiversity of the region. It attracts several million visitors each year due to the popular activities such as climbing, walking, cycling, and water sports that you can do there. The Dinorwig Power Station is a hydroelectric power station that is located deep inside the mountain, inside tunnels and caverns. This has minimized the impact to the environment whilst meeting the human demand for energy.
The Lake District covers 2,292 kilometres squared of land and is therefore England's largest national park.
In the Central Fells, there are habitats that exist above the tree line, which are rare in the UK, and they support a diverse range of Arctic alpine plant communities. Specialized trees have evolved in these harsh habitats. Lower regions of the Lake District are home to the sundew, which are one of the UK's few carnivorous plants.
The control of human activity in the Lake District is very similar to that of Snowdonia. It conserves the region and allows people to experience the wildlife it has to offer.